Crimson Tide wasn't just another action thriller, it was a film the U.S. Navy tried to kill before it was made, had its best dialogue written by a director who went uncredited, and starred two actors.
You seem to have the pulse of the men.
Thank you, sir.
The studio almost never put together. Today we're counting down 15 weird facts about Crimson Tide. Stick around for number 1, because the FBI director quoted a line from this film in his senior leadership meetings for years, and the line he chose says everything about why it works. Fact 15, a TV documentary about submarines started the whole thing. Crimson Tide didn't begin with a script or a pitch. It began with a television documentary. Producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer watched a 4-part series called Submarines, Sharks of Steel, and came away convinced that the interior world of a nuclear submarine was one of the most dramatically untapped environments in cinema. Claustrophobic, hierarchical, filled with men under pressure making life-and-death decisions in complete isolation from the rest of the world, it was everything a thriller needed. They brought in screenwriter Michael Schiffer to develop a story, and writer Richard Henrick contributed to the concept. The original premise was different from what audiences eventually saw. It didn't start as a mutiny story. That element arrived later, after a real-world encounter with the U.S. Navy convinced the producers that they had found the more combustible premise. A cable documentary about submarines kicked off one of the most intense thrillers of the decade. Fact 14, the Navy tried to talk the producers out of making it. When the script started taking shape, Simpson and Bruckheimer approached the U.S. Navy for cooperation. The Navy said yes, with a condition. In 1993, the entire production team was invited aboard the USS Florida, a Trident nuclear submarine operating out of Bangor, Washington. Tony Scott, the producers and the screenwriters, spent time at sea with the crew. The Navy's executive officer, Lieutenant Commander William Toty, walked them through every procedure: fire response, flooding response, missile launch sequences, and allowed the filmmakers to videotape all of it. The Navy's intention was transparent. They were confident that once the filmmakers understood the actual redundancy systems on a Trident submarine, they would conclude that a mutiny scenario was technologically impossible and would rewrite the premise entirely. The filmmakers came back with a story about a mutiny. The Navy withdrew its cooperation immediately and refused to assist the production at any point during filming. Fact 13, Tony Scott chased the real USS Alabama in a helicopter. With the Navy's cooperation gone, the production had a specific problem. It needed footage of a submarine submerging, and submarines are not easy to film without the Navy's help. Scott's solution was direct. A compensated civilian informant told him that a submarine was departing Pearl Harbor. Scott checked whether filming naval vessels in open water was illegal. It wasn't. He chartered boats and a helicopter, positioned himself at Pearl Harbor, and waited. When the submarine left port, he pursued it and filmed it continuously until it submerged. By complete coincidence, the submarine Scott had chased and filmed was the real USS Alabama, the very vessel the film was set aboard. The Navy was unhappy. No charges were ever filed. The footage was incorporated into the finished film. A director who had been denied access to the subject of his own movie filmed it anyway from a helicopter while the Navy watched from a distance and had no legal basis to stop him. Fact 12, Hackman was the third choice when Pitt left. When Pacino did Gene Hackman was not the first or second choice to play Captain Ramsey. The role was offered first to Warren Beatty, who took too long to commit, then to Al Pacino, who did the same. Hackman said yes quickly. Brad Pitt had been in discussions to play Hunter, the role that went to Denzel Washington. Pitt's interest was specific. He wanted to play opposite Pacino. When Pacino dropped out, Pitt dropped out immediately behind him. The film that audiences remember as a perfectly matched collision between Hackman and Washington almost starred a completely different pair of actors. The cast that made Crimson Tide what it is came together not through deliberate first-choice casting, but through a sequence of actors taking too long to make a decision. Hackman committed first, Washington came next. The two men who turned the film into a masterclass of screen acting were the third options the producers settled for. Fact 11, Quentin Tarantino wrote the best lines without a credit. The Silver Surfer debate, the crew riffing on their favorite submarine movies. The pop culture references that feel like they arrived from a different and more interesting film. All of it was written by Quentin Tarantino. Tony Scott had worked with Tarantino on True Romance 2 years earlier and brought him in for an uncredited last-minute rewrite. Tarantino was not yet a member of the Writers Guild of America at the time, which is believed to be the reason he received no screen credits. Multiple other writers also contributed without credit. Robert Towne wrote the Clausewitz scene in The Officer's Mess, and Steven Zaillian contributed additional dialogue. Denzel Washington was reportedly unhappy about Tarantino's additions, feeling they undermined the film's serious tone. He later apologized to Tarantino directly, noting that his own daughter had just appeared in Django Unchained. The lines Washington objected to became the ones reviewers quoted most approvingly. Fact 10. The film was directly inspired by a real Cuban Missile Crisis incident. The confrontation between Hackman and Washington in Crimson Tide, a captain ordering a missile launch and an executive officer refusing to confirm it without a complete message grant, was not invented. It mirrors almost exactly an incident that occurred aboard Soviet submarine B-59 during the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. B-59 had been depth-charged by American forces and was cut off from communications. Captain Valentin Savitsky, believing war had begun, ordered a nuclear torpedo to be armed and fired. 2 officers had to agree for the launch to proceed. Second-in-command Vasily Arkhipov refused. He persuaded Savitsky to surface and reestablish contact. The crisis passed. Arkhipov's refusal is now considered one of the most significant decisions in human history. The moment one man's hesitation may have prevented nuclear war, Denzel Washington's character is a direct parallel to Arkhipov. The film never acknowledged this publicly. The real incident remained classified until years after the film's release. Fact 9. The flooding scene was shot for 14 hours in a cold pool. The sequence where the Alabama's Bilge Bay floods, the crew chest-deep in water, fighting to contain the damage while the clock runs, was filmed over 14 hours in a chilled pool. The water temperature was deliberately kept low to make the actors' physical reactions authentic. Nobody was performing discomfort. Everyone on camera was genuinely cold, genuinely tired, and genuinely fighting the physical toll of standing in cold water for most of a working day. The production also built the submarine interior set on a large hydraulic gimbal, a platform that could rock and tilt the set to simulate the vessel moving through the water. The practical environment gave the film's interior sequences a physical authenticity that audiences absorbed without being able to name. They felt like they were underwater because the actors were genuinely miserable, and misery on camera reads as reality. Fact 8. The French Navy stepped in. When the U.S. Navy stepped out after the U.S. Navy withdrew its cooperation over the mutiny storyline, the production needed a replacement for the aircraft carrier footage it could no longer obtain from the American military. The French Navy agreed to assist. The aircraft carrier visible in the film's surface scenes is the French carrier Foch, not an American vessel. The dockside scene where Captain Ramsey addresses the crew with a submarine in the background features a different vessel entirely. The USS Barbel, a decommissioned American submarine that had been sold out of Navy service and was in the process of being scrapped. Its sail, the conning towers, had already been removed and was replaced with a plywood mock-up. A film about the American nuclear deterrent was shot using a French aircraft carrier and a submarine that was being cut apart for scrap metal. The finished film looks convincingly American. Everything supporting it was borrowed, improvised, or pursued from a helicopter. Fact 7. The bridge set was recycled into Independence Day. When Crimson Tide wrapped, the production had built a detailed physical replica of the USS Alabama's bridge, the elevated conning tower where the captain issues orders to submerge. Rather than dismantle it, the set was retained. It appears again 1 year later in Roland Emmerich's Independence Day, repurposed as the bridge of USS Georgia. 2 of the biggest films of the mid-1990s share the same physical set piece, one built for a submarine thriller, one repurposed for an alien invasion blockbuster. The set that Hackman commanded in 1995 hosted an entirely different military crisis in 1996. It is a specific kind of Hollywood economy that only becomes visible when you know what you're looking at. The railing, the instruments, and the framing are identical. The catastrophe unfolding around them is completely different. Fact 6. Viggo Mortensen and James Gandolfini were both pre-fame. The supporting cast of Crimson Tide contained 2 actors who had not yet become the figures audiences later recognized them as. Viggo Mortensen played weapons officer Peter Ince 4 years before Peter Jackson would cast him as Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings. James Gandolfini played Lieutenant Bobby Dougherty 4 years before David Chase cast him as Tony Soprano. Both men delivered strong, specific work inside an ensemble dominated by 2 of cinema's most powerful presences. Neither was a name the studio had attached for commercial reasons. They were simply the right actors for the parts. Crimson Tide appears in both their filmographies as an early entry from before the transformations that made them famous. 2 future icons doing solid work in the lower third of a credit sequence years before anyone knew what they were going to become. Fact 5. Ryan Phillippe made his feature film debut aboard the Alabama. Ryan Phillippe's first theatrical film credit is Crimson Tide. He played Seaman Gradam, a small supporting role with limited screen time in a film dominated by Hackman and Washington. Phillippe had previously appeared on the daytime soap One Life to Live, where he had played the first gay teenager in daytime television history. Crimson Tide was his transition from television to film. His career after it included I Know What You Did Last Summer, Cruel Intentions, and Flags of Our Fathers. The first film he appeared in put him inside a nuclear submarine at the edge of World War III. He had no lines that changed the course of the film's argument, and the film gave him exactly what a young actor needs from a first feature and the experience of working inside a major production next to major talent before the camera found its way to him more deliberately. Fact 4. Hans Zimmer won a Grammy using synthesizers instead of an orchestra. Hans Zimmer's score for Crimson Tide won the 1996 Grammy Award for Best Instrumental Composition, written for a motion picture or for television. It is one of his personal favorites in his own catalog by his own account. What makes it distinct from most film scores of the era is its instrumentation. Rather than leaning on traditional orchestral resources, Zimmer built the score primarily on synthesizers, layered electronic textures that gave the music a mechanical, pressurized quality appropriate to the environment. The naval hymn Eternal Father Strong to Save is woven through the score, providing a traditional counterweight to the synthesized pulse underneath it. Zimmer later said that he and Tony Scott essentially sat together every day and went at each other until the music found its shape. The score that won the Grammy emerged from a creative argument that ran the length of post-production. The tension in the film and the tension in the recording sessions were, by his account, indistinguishable. Fact 3. Hackman punched Washington and called it an accident during production. Gene Hackman punched Denzel Washington. The incident occurred while Hackman was engaged in boxing training and a physical preparation he had taken on before shooting began. The punch connected. Hackman later told Larry King that it was an accident. He acknowledged that it had made things tense between them. The working relationship between Hackman and Washington was not, by multiple accounts, a warm one during production. They were playing characters in fundamental opposition to each other, and the personal distance between them fed the antagonism on screen. The question of whether the punch was accidental or the product of a set dynamic that had reached a certain temperature is one neither man resolved publicly with complete clarity. Fact 2. The real naval laws changed because of this film. Crimson Tide ends with a title card explaining that during the Clinton administration, naval launch protocols were changed, confirming that only the president now has final authority to order a nuclear strike in a situation like the one depicted. The disclaimer was placed there to address Navy concerns about the film's portrayal of their command structure. What it inadvertently confirmed was that the scenario the film depicted had been possible under existing protocols and that the protocols had been changed to prevent it. A film about a breakdown in the nuclear command chain ended with a text acknowledgement that the real-world chain had been quietly modified during production. Crimson Tide made the argument for 3 hours. The title card proved it. Fact 1. The FBI director quoted it in senior leadership meetings for years. Robert Mueller served as director of the FBI from 2001 to 2013, the longest tenure of any FBI director since J. Edgar Hoover. In his senior leadership meetings with the FBI's top officials, Mueller had a line he returned to consistently. It came from Gene Hackman's Captain Ramsey. The line is direct and unambiguous. We're here to preserve democracy, not to practice it. Mueller quoted it as a management principle, a reminder that an institution with the FBI's powers operates under constraints that exist for structural reasons, not personal ones. A line written for a trigger-happy submarine captain became the operating philosophy of the director of the federal agency most responsible for domestic law enforcement during some of the most consequential years in American history. Tony Scott put it in Hackman's mouth. Tarantino may or may not have touched it. Mueller carried it into the rooms where American security policy was made and used it as a compass. Some lines land further than anyone intends. Which fact hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives into the thrillers that knew more than they were supposed to. Until next time.